Welcome to today's public webinar entitled Best Practices in Virtual Technical Training. This is a live panel discussion we have with 3 experts in the technical training industry here to share some of our experiences we've gone through as a TPC training organization about virtual technical training, and to really share with those of you who are also looking to either A, be a potential student of technical virtual training, and B, potentially hold your own virtual training, about some of the best practices we've learned through the hard knocks over the years, and share with you kind of what that might look like and how you can really get some of those technical skills based training in a virtual format. So my name's Ryan Smith, product manager with TPC Training. I'm today's host for the day. As well as we have Dennis Walker on the line, our Vice President of Technical Content as well. He's going to share with you some history of the training industry. He's been in the industry for several decades now, and he's really has lots of experience in the matter. And we also have Greg Sutton, who is one of our seasoned, experienced instructors from the electrical industry, and he's going to share with you some hands-on exercises he does in our virtual training sessions. So very happy to be here with you all. So here's just a little breakdown of what we're going to get ourselves into. So we got the evolution of technical training from the 1990s to today. Dennis will walk us through that. And then we're going to talk about the challenge with virtual technical training, really, you know, what people see are some of the barriers, and then what we have done to overcome those barriers to the greatest extent, and some of our latest virtual technical training experience, and talking about really some of the trends as well out there in the industry of technical training experiences in the virtual realm. Then we're going to switch over to Greg and really going to talk about those lessons learned in the virtual training industry and show us a demo of one of the exercises that we go through in some of our electrical troubleshooting coursework. But first, I want to do one of our favorite interactive things we can do in the classroom virtually, and that's do a quick poll of everyone here. We got quite a number of people on the line right now, so I think this will be a really educational session. So let's see how we do, everyone. I'm going to launch a poll with some 2 questions of curiosity for you. And I would like you to choose and click your answers. Again, you can choose more than one answer if you so choose, if more than one apply to you. So I'm going to relaunch the poll right now. And there we go. So everyone should see on their screen a poll that has 2 questions to it. I want you to go ahead and choose your answers and click submit at the very bottom. You'll want to scroll down and click submit. And as you continue to fill in your results, we can share that with the world once we're done. All right, we're getting some great responses already. I'm seeing the numbers flow in here on the back. So this is something really fun we can get to do as instructors, is if we have large crowds in a virtual format, we can really get the gauge of the room instantly using some of this video chat software. Okay, good. This is a great spread already, Greg and Dennis. You're gonna like this. So I'm gonna give you about, so we have half of our attendees right now, roughly, who have voted. So now we're at 71% voted. It's giving me a proportion. I'll give you about 10 more seconds to vote. All right, it looks like our voting is done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end our poll. And I'm going to share our results with you. So what I believe is showing up on everyone's screen is the results of our poll. And I would like to definitely let you all know that it looks like most of you, the biggest proportion of you, might need to conduct your own virtual training. So really, we can spend some time really talking about the best practices from our side of the video camera and some of the best practices, as well as you have about half as many of you have employees who are going to take virtual training. So a really good amount of people here. We have some people who might just be a student in the classroom and they want to know what it's all about. And some people just more want general information. That's great. In terms of experience with the virtual format, most people have just a little bit of experience, some experience with a few classes under their belt, but maybe not highly experienced. And quite frankly, this type of full virtual training format hasn't been around for very long. So that makes some sense to me. All right, I'm gonna move on from that poll. And so thank you all for your response. It really helps give us a gauge of who we're talking to today. I want to let everyone know before we move on to our first panelist this is a fully live panel session. So you are all here and we want to interact with you any way we can. And that in that vein, I would like to let you all know that we have a Q&A button at the top of this webinar that you can look either on your toolbar, that's either at the top or bottom of your screen, for Q&A. And you can type a question to our panelists in the Q&A, and we're gonna go through that Q&A process and interact with you guys once we're done showing you what we would like to show you today. Another thing I want to let everyone know who's here, this webinar is being recorded. So we're going to post this recording on our website within about 2 business days of today's session. And everyone here is also going to get a PDF copy of our presentation we're presenting today. So look out for that. All right, so our first speaker today, our first panelist, is really going to talk about the history of the training industry from his wealth of experience in the industry. And that's Dennis Walker, our VP of technical content. So take it away, Dennis.
Hi, everybody. Appreciate taking the time out to come to our webinar here and just give you a little background. I've been in industry about 25 years, started out in industry as a technician, as an electrician, and as a supervisor, maintenance supervisor. So I came from a background in the skilled trades, and want to just kind of review how we got here. In the prior to the early 90s, all the skilled trades training or maintenance training, whatever you might refer to it, was really done 2 formats: on the job training primarily, and with support from classroom instruction. Most of us understand that, or a great example of that would be apprenticeship programs, where you had on the job training in the field supported with classroom. So you had the theoretical background from the classroom supported by the applications in the field. Still, that's a gold standard, if you will. Still much applied today, but things have changed. And so what made those changes, or what was the next level? The classroom curriculum was really based on printed textbooks at that time. All the information was supported around that on the theory side. The practical application was on the job, no question, and subject matter experts on the job. So you took your top employees and you supported those, sent somebody with, sent Bob, the new hire, with Joe for weeks, months, and years to learn what Joe did. So you basically learned what he knew. Early 2000s, with the basically bringing out of the personal computer, we had computer-based training. So that allowed us the next logical step, which was putting information, the theoretical information, on initially disks and then networks. And so you had the access of this information, and people could learn it not necessarily in a classroom, but on their own time. So it was a big advantage from that standpoint. So time and self-paced learning. That then basically, the next iteration was the internet. The internet allowed that information to be put on the web for the most part. So in the early 2000s, really not realistically until probably 10 years ago, did the web and the application of the web and everybody's access to the web really allow for web-based training. Now, all those things have one challenge. They have all been advancements. Anything to do with the computer-based or web-based training allowed us to do a lot more with graphics and videos and enhancements. But the one application that is still one of the key components to any training for at least the skilled trades and maintenance and many other trades is the practical application. The theoretical side, but having the ability to get that practical information. So you can see here some applications of training in the classroom or off the job training. There's positives and negatives to both, but nearly everybody still has the on the job training application. But in today's world, for the maintenance training or skilled trades training, things have evolved to the point where it's probably better than we've ever had it because of all the tools that are at our disposal today. And there's a reason why for that. The main reason is probably overall technology. And there's several things that are pieces to that technology. One obviously is is the internet and the broadband internet speeds that we have today. So that's definitely a piece that has changed a lot for us. And that change has really come about in the last couple of years, primarily with the applications of the web and the broad-based, not only in industry or in companies, but also at people's homes. So that's a big piece of it. The other piece of it is the improved training tools. We have better tools today as far as simulations and information availability. Even PowerPoint to some degree is much improved, and all the tools that we have from a virtual application that we can pull from. And the last piece that has really made the biggest difference in recent years are the communication platforms. Ryan mentioned the chat features. The tool we're using today for this video conference has improved over the last 3 or 4 years. In the last couple of years, actually, the features are much more conducive to a very, very good training application. So we've come to a point where over the years, we've gone from really classroom and printed materials to using all the tools, which include all the information available to us on the web, the tools and applications that we're using now in the classroom, and we can do that virtually. And we actually have probably more capability in today's world with the tools that we have to conduct training virtually, almost on the same level as we do in person, if not better. There's actually more applications, and we can do them quicker and better than we've ever done them in the past. So that need to know information, that the human interaction with an instructor and an employee or attendee that's learning is better than it's ever been today. So you get the practical application and experience of that instructor, supplemented by the advanced tools. And we've got a recipe today that makes technical training very, very viable virtually today, better than we've ever had it before.
Yes, absolutely. So that basically is a great segue into, well, what are some of those ways we can get ourselves into some of these high quality virtual training exercises? And that's what Greg's going to take us into. And the segue into that is going to be my session of the panel. And that is really talking about what are some of the challenges people are facing in the technical training industry. So basically, what does a typical learner have to go through in their virtual training experience, right? Virtual trainers or virtual learners can be easily distracted, right? So basically, if you're having a look at a computer screen, there's a lot going on that could distract you in terms of emails and websites and other people around you. Virtual learners can be harder to gauge in interaction because there's that tendency, right, that Greg and I know all too well, that people can kind of sit back and engage in the personal training kind of as if they're watching TV and not really interact with what's on their screen. Learners can be camera shy for sure. So where they don't really want to kind of see themselves in a mirror as well as seeing others. So that's a barrier we definitely try to overcome. That's very surmountable, and we're going to talk about how. Virtual learners have a wide variety of computer skills as well. So, some people are, even in today's day and age, are pretty new to computer technology, navigating around with their mouse, getting different windows to show up, not to mention webcams and microphones. Internet, right? It comes and goes in different locations. Our company has dealt with our fair share of internet outages over the course of our virtual training sessions over the years. So it's just another variable that, again, is very surmountable, and we're going to talk about that. In particular with audio and video setup. It's hard, right? But to not only know all the material, let's say, about electrical safety or electrical troubleshooting or HVAC maintenance, and to be able to do these activities, you got to have the audio video so you can showcase the activities properly with multiple camera angles and really high quality microphones. Because of all these barriers, the perception persists, right? That virtual training is just simply not as hands-on, right? The word hands-on as in-person training. And I'm not going to learn as many of those hard skills. Got a great question before this webinar that said, I really want to know if I can give people skills during these virtual training sessions. And the answer is unequivocally yes, you can. It's just how you approach the training session as the instructor and some of those virtual training methods we can follow. First and foremost, right? Here's a screenshot directly from one of our classroom sessions, right? You can see Greg up there acting as our instructor, and we can see some hands-on equipment as well that we're going through. In this case, it's one of our PLC, programmable logic controller, exercises we're running the classroom through. So we got tabletop views of equipment, basically full audio, full video, full screen sharing of interactive schematics. We're going to actually go through that exercise here as well. And then multiple monitors for our instructors. So Greg is set up right now with no less than 2 monitors that he can see his instructors over here and the presentation over here, and you can interact fully with everyone there, just like they're sitting in the room with you, no matter where you might be broadcasting the class from. And so many of you, I highly recommend minimum 2 screens that you use as the facilitator and instructor. It's been a life changer for our instructors to be able to interact with their people using dual monitor mode in your video chat software as well. Then really the next step that seals the deal in terms of the latest and the greatest in terms of technical training is using these special virtual facilitation techniques to keep people engaged online. It is a whole different ballgame. Right? We have to acknowledge, because of those barriers we saw, giving virtual training is just simply different than giving it in the classroom. Doesn't mean it's any worse or better. It's just different, but you can get just as good of discussion. And like Dennis said, it can actually be better for some interaction and for some intensive skills-based activities than the classroom, because you can immediately engage them because they're sitting right in front of a device that they can engage with on the topic. So reaching out to students regularly, really highly encouraging that interaction and making sure you can see and hear everyone and reach out to everyone who's out there across the country. Employing multiple camera views, like we mentioned. We also set up camera views to whiteboards where instructor can write any of the drawings and schematics we're going through in the class and matching them together, as well as the equipment tabletops are very important to our sessions. Annotations. So video chat software typically comes equipped with annotation, and using that to its fullest extent as an instructor is huge, where this is something you can't just do on a projector screen at a meeting location, right? You can't just draw all over this projector screen. But thanks to video software, our instructors can readily draw arrows and circle components of what you're seeing on the screen, whether it be a website or a simulation or just a diagram that we want to highlight things on. It makes it very interactive, and we're going to see how. We just demonstrated live polling, guys, right? That's a fun way to get the gauge. Not only live polling, but also breakout rooms, right? So Zoom, in particular, the one we're using now, allows us to split the groups into, let's say, 2 groups of 3, and then they can discuss their own issues and then come back to the main session when they're done. Really fun for interaction and for getting people kind of shocked out of their state of just sitting back and watching, right? The session happen. That's something we work actively to counteract. Remote control, I think this is one of my favorite interaction activities, and we're going to showcase that for you today for sure. And that is basically allowing these students to say, what would you do in this situation? Let's say you're troubleshooting this circuit you see in front of you, or you're troubleshooting this air conditioner you see in front of you. What are you going to do? Here, take control of my screen and show me what you're going to check and what you're going to do and why. And they go through that activity as the learners. And it really is remarkably simulated, right? Again, it's not a real air conditioner in front of you, and it's not a real electrical panel in front of you, but man, are you learning why you need to measure 0 voltage or 120 volts or whatever it might be. So it's something you really got to try to believe in, right? And then finally, our instructors, man, they're equipped with not only the skills of teaching this highly technical content, but also acting as the guide. And this is what any of you instructors have to be prepared to do, is act as the guide for the software. For anyone who's not familiar with the software, of muting microphones, of sharing videos, of communicating with the instructor. So getting that whole warm-up process at the top of each class is something our instructors are getting seasoned and have experienced with as well. And that's an important part to any virtual facilitation. And then finally, running simulations. We're going to actually run simulations in scenarios with real world equipment for the folks in the classroom. It's absolutely essential to still have the equipment front and center, and the ins and outs of all the different working parts of the equipment as front and center for this hands-on experience and this interactive experience for building skills. And we're going to showcase that here. just a quick little thing I threw together as well as part of the panel is here's some technologies you might find yourself having access to, right? Conference, kind of building a virtual conference room setting, so you don't actually have to have a lapel mic if you're giving, you know, the session. That's the way we've opted as a company, where you can set very high quality microphones around the room, and no matter where you're standing, you can do it. Or you can just use the onboard microphone on your computer if you're going to be close enough to the computer. You can see, so this one right here is lapel mic. Whoops. Here we go, lapel mic. This one down here is the lapel mic. This one up here is the wireless mic solution. And then from a video side on the other side, you can see this is actually the Facebook portal device that maybe you've been hearing about, which auto swivels as you walk around. So you can get kind of auto rotating cameras. Those are kind of state of the art as far as cameras are concerned. Using Logitech laptop mounted cameras in HD, give you a high quality signal. And then over here, auto swiveling camera that you can swivel and set presets on. We've done this in our virtual classroom environments with high levels of success. Zoom, right? Zoom is our one of choice, but there's all sorts of ones out there like GoToTraining, WebEx, and there's all sorts of great companies doing video chat software. And I'm sure these companies are not struggling in today's day and age where video chat is becoming more essential to what we do. And I'm sure many of you on this call, it's become absolutely essential to getting training and for conducting your business. So that's really why we're here, is we want to show that what's the best in the experience that you can get, and is it really worth it, right? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share and give it over to Greg. And he's going to talk a little bit more about the whole exercise proportion, really do run a demo for you about some of his lessons he's learned in the classroom, some things he's experienced in the classroom, and really show you something he actually does in the classroom. So Greg, take it away, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. You know, it's not surprising that a lot of the things that Ryan said apply to the regular classroom too, in person. All the things that worked in the classroom work online. It's just even more so. It's even more important to have a mix, for example. Get them participating. That's the big one. How do you do that? That's always been a problem, but it's again, it's critical in these online classes. Getting them to share their knowledge is a big one. Right up front, we let them know that you know, most of these classes, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge in the room. We get them to share that, the experiences, and everybody learns, including the instructors. We learn things too from guys because of the different experiences that they have. Interactive role playing is another one. You know, things like I've seen some of our instructors do code classes, which you would think would be just as dry as it gets, but they're saying, okay, I'm the inspector and you're the contractor. What would you say if this happened? You know, and really get the guys involved. That's always helpful. Ryan mentioned groups a minute ago, where this software will allow you to split people out into groups. Dennis gave me one idea that I just used the other day. It had to do with you're shown a little video clip. Let them know things they're going to look for, break them into groups, let these guys talk about it within a group and come back with the ideas. The last one I did had to do with safety. What were the mistakes made here in this video? How could they have been, you know, how could have been corrected, that kind of thing. Very effective. And remember that all these things we're talking about here, they break it up. They break the class up into different things, you know, so you're not watching a talking head for 8 to 16 hours. Questions, of course, questions. You just need to really make it clear that any question is okay. Our classes, many of them tend to be geared toward industrial maintenance, but you might have a guy in there that wants to know how to wire a three-way switch. Make it apparent that they can ask that kind of question too, because those don't eat up a lot of class time, and it gets them involved too. This is some old school stuff that still works. We have workbooks, reference guides that we always send out. Get them into the workbooks. The reference guides we have an awful lot of information in there. We get into that. And typically short videos, short animations. I have some that are there's no audio, so I kind of narrate it myself and go through. But it's the mix of all these. not one thing for too long a time at one point. And then safety. Another one we found is if you hit the safety, I mean, you know, safety is involved in everything we do. If you hit it for too long at a time, it can be a little dry, and get the guys telling their stories. But instead of one big chunk, safety throughout. So, for example, we're talking about how to use a meter. Well, then we incorporate how to safely use a meter, and then we're talking about how to troubleshooting mechanisms, how to go about it. Well, how to safely go about it. You know, so incorporate the safety into all of it instead of having just one big chunk. Instruction, of course, you have to have a little bit of lecture, but you definitely want it to be a little bit. You do have to have a certain amount of instruction, but the problem is that is easy to take too far. It is really easy for an instructor to talk too long. It's very easy. So you want to make really sure that they have as much hands-on as possible. They have to, of course, have some instruction, but that brings me to the hands-on stuff. So on that lecture, it's never been effective. At least 8 hours of it isn't effective. You have to have a certain amount of that, but it's never been the most effective. Humans aren't capable of listening to somebody talk for 6 hours or something like that. So one of the things we do, and this software is great about letting you switch cameras, for example. The hands-on activities, one of them we use in our basic class, and what I'm going to do now is just simply switch a camera to one I've got over here on one of the simulators that we use. This is we call these snap kits. They're very basic. They're very basic, but as we can see here, it doesn't take much. We're getting across the basics in these classes. This is exactly what we're doing. So, for example, here we've made a series circuit, 2 lights, and even and we send these to the students ahead of time, of course. And then we can even measure, for example, the current. So they can take voltage measurements, they can take current measurements, and get across those basics that we that the class is about. I mean, the one we use this in is called basic electricity. And like I said, the software makes it pretty easy to switch back to my camera here. So those are some of the ones we use in the more basic ones. They're very effective, and it breaks the class up, and they actually do get their hands on this stuff. We know that most people are hands-on learners. They need that stuff in front of them. So let me show you another one that we've really had a lot of success with. Again, I'm just changing to another screen share here, and Ryan, you can verify that everybody's looking at the Simutech software.
Yep, I can see it, and I'm also putting on my student hat now. So we're going to use me as a pretend student for Greg, actually maybe an actual student for Greg, to be some of your interactive activities you're going to run with me. I also, as we're getting started, guys, just to pipe in, fill up that Q&A line with any questions or curiosities you have for us. In just a few minutes, we're going to be wrapping up our main part of the discussion, the more formal part, and we really want to open it up to your good questions and in discussion topics. So we got a few coming in now that are great, so feel free to keep it going. So take it away, Greg. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. And we are going to try to keep this short. It's hard. One of the great things about the software is things like this, and we use this in our electrical troubleshooting class. We can say, okay, here is a component on the schematic, and that would be, for example, this coil here on the relay. And then we can say, well, put this symbol right here, right, is this one, or this symbol right here is this one. So that's great. Once you get them to understand that, then the next step would be saying, okay, we would like you to draw let's say a line from this point right here on the schematic, right? And we'll have Ryan, let's have Ryan do that. Ryan, I'm going to point to this point on the schematic here, And now I'm going to turn the mouse over to you
Okay.
and give you the drawing tool. Could you draw a point from that arrow on the schematic and make sure do you have control over the mouse?
Let's see. Yep. Yep. Looks like I do.
Okay, so tell us what you're thinking there is. You're going to start at the end of that arrow, right?
Yep. I'm going to drag over. So I think this part of the schematic is this part over here.
And you can let go.
Panel.
There you go. Right. So we do a lot of that kind of thing. Thank you, Ryan. Very good. I'm glad you did it correctly. That helped. And so once they understand that, once they really get the idea of where the components are in the schematic versus where they are in the simulator, then we can start troubleshooting this thing and say, well, we see here that none of the lights come on. And this is where you really get them involved. And you say, okay, what might be wrong? And somebody says, well, there might not be any power there at all. So we have a meter here to use. They at that point, I would turn the leads over to them and say, okay, just drag and drop the leads. Where would you check? Now, of course, we lead up to this point, give them some instruction, but mostly we try to keep them engaged and have their hands on this. So somebody says, hey, I think there might not be any power at all. Well, they'll drop one lead there. All they have to do is drag and drop. And then they see, well, we have power. Okay. Then maybe ask somebody else, what do you think might be the problem now? We have problems. Somebody says, well, there's nothing happens, so maybe it's a fuse. Where would you put your lead to check the fuse? And maybe they move a lead over here and say, okay, well, the fuse isn't the problem. And the software gives you a lot of other tools as well, where you can change components out, take wires off to check from an open point, things like that. It's very, very well done. The software will yell at you if you don't lock it out and tag it out and try to put an ohm meter on there. That kind of thing gives you lots of tips in addition to what the instructor is doing. So that's it really. I mean, we could talk about this kind of software here for hours. We really could. It's great, but the big thing is to make sure and keep those students involved with a lot of different activities. That's really it. That's really it. And Ryan, you have something from here, right? You're going to take them from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm taking a look at our Q&A line. It's definitely filling up. And but basically, that's everything we wanted to get into with y'all. So I'm going to take the screen share back from you, Greg, if you want to. I'll go ahead.
Okay. I'll stop the share and you can take it over.
Yep, and I will get us over to here. Yep, perfect. I'm going to share my screen with the world here. And basically, this is our just final questions slide that I'm opening the floor up to everyone's questions here. And definitely, as I'm looking at them, we got some great questions coming in. So I'm gonna take a look at some of these. Let's start with, so this is open to the panel. So I'm gonna pose some of these questions. I'm gonna find some of these that we can answer, and then let's answer them as a panel. I'll pose them to you guys. Here's a really good one. How do we actually incorporate polling at the beginning of the meeting? How do we do that? Well, Greg, do you want to walk them through how to set up a poll the way we do it right now?
Sure. Of course, it's going to depend on the software, but
yeah,
it's very simple. It's very simple. There's a button there that says poll. Now, the big thing is you have to create these polls in advance. Again, depending on the software, but once you create them, it's a very simple thing. You push a button that says launch poll, and then they answer the ones just like you saw it there. And then when you end the poll, it gives you the results right on your screen. And you have the choice there where you can whether you would like to share those with somebody or not. And you just click a button to share or not. I can't think of any reason we wouldn't share them. Those are really topics for discussion when you're done. Safety is a big one for us. Have you had electrical safety training? How long ago was it? Do you have a policy? All that's great information for discussion topics, instant feedback.
Absolutely. We definitely are getting a lot of interest here in the simulation you ran us through. Yeah, that's from the Simutech organization. They provided us that, and they offer some great simulations for us. really fun and really good for instructors to use in our electrical troubleshooting classrooms. Let's see. Let's talk about times, Dennis, in terms of committed times that let's say we say a session's going to be, and then how long it actually is. How important would you say it is, Dennis, in terms of your recommendation not to exceed the amount of time that was, let's say, advertised or posted for a virtual learning session?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I saw the question there. I think timing of these events and lengths of these events are very important. I think one of the things that Greg mentioned is the ability to vary the delivery. If you said, hey, we're going to do this for 8 hours, most people would say, well, virtual training, that's a long time. But we have had actually reviews and people come back to us and say, well, we'd really like to spend more time. And the tools today allow us to do that. The interactive things that we've done are very important. I think probably the key is the varying the cadence, varying the delivery with using the different approaches that are available today with the software. So I don't think the length completely is as big a challenge as some might think. Sounds like a long time, but the comfort and knowing the tools at your disposal, I think you can easily do multiple hours of training continuously. And most of our training is 2 days in length, and we have no pushback at all on that. So they're back-to-back days. So I think it can vary. I think the topic is probably going to tell you how long it needs to be, and vary that delivery is key, Ryan.
Absolutely. So man, we're getting a flurry of great questions. A lot of people were curious about that software. It is Simutech. Feel free to take a look at it. And this is the reason why Simutech gave us their full permission to use their stuff. So people who are curious about it can learn more about them. So that's definitely learn more about them. They're a very useful product. So let's talk about our Zoom license. So we are using Zoom video software as a company. And Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, we are using the business and webinar licenses under Zoom, or is it the enterprise and webinar licenses that we use at TPC?
Yeah, with all of these platforms, I'll call them platforms, GoToMeeting and such, we've used others, and there are different levels that are available. We're using a webinar platform. Most of our meetings are in the standard Zoom delivery enterprise, but each of these organizations has different levels and packages that are available depending on what your needs are. For sure. And there are lots of good applications out there. Zoom is getting a lot of recognition today. It's almost like it's getting branded as a video call. People say, I'm on a Zoom meeting. Everybody knows exactly what they mean. And we've been using Zoom now for a couple of years, and we've used some of the other applications prior. So I think all of them have very similar applications, tools inside, and all are improving.
All right. Let's see. Yep. More on that software. More on that software. More on that software. A really good question people are asking is, where can I find similar kind of simulations or ways to run scenarios with other topics like HVAC? We have an automotive technology instructor here who wants to learn about it, and a couple of the other things. I would say a lot of the learning companies, because we regularly attend the yearly training conference called ATD. I'm sure many of you in the training industry on this line are familiar with ATD. Huge conference, happens every year. Unfortunately, it was canceled this year, but it's really the expo and the what's what and the who's who in the training industry. And I've been going every year for the last couple of years or so. And it's really interesting to see where virtual simulations and virtual reality, someone else is asking about on the Q&A line, is fitting into the whole idea of training in general, not just virtual, but training in general. Obviously, as far as virtual reality is concerned, it is a little more difficult to get into virtual reality in a virtual format, even though they both say virtual, right? You kind of need that hardware, that equipment to put on the goggles and look around and that kind of stuff. It is being explored out there on the expo floor, but it's just not quite ready for prime time quite yet. There's some really good specialty, especially healthcare industry. simulations I've seen in some retail industry where you kind of simulate scenarios of taking care of customers or whatever that are really cool in the virtual space. Just a lot of the ones I've seen for technical skills for virtual reality that I've interacted with, and Dennis was there when we interacted with one at an HVAC conference, is really they're just bugs that have to work out. Sometimes you go through a wall, or sometimes you suddenly warp to another area, and and it makes people actually motion sick as they're doing these things. But one company, I can definitely let you know about. Cengage is one we came across that can do some HVAC simulations. I think they have some versions of that. One of our instructors has a follow the heat exercise, which is very, very engaging. Gary Xavier, one of our instructors, has a really cool HVAC exercise that he has. Let's see, virtual training and in-person training. What are some other good questions? What if I don't have a working camera? what if I want to take a virtual training and I don't have a webcam? Am I gonna just be missing out? Do you want to try that one, Greg?
Yeah, sure. It's happened lots of times.
It happens almost every time we hold a class, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely better to have the camera. But if you don't, it's doable. We had a couple of guys last week that had no camera and no mic, and they used the chat function. Fortunately, and it was three guys at one company in the same room. Fortunately, they had a guy on the keyboard that was pretty fast, and they were still great about participating. And I really think that that's where it helps. When you can see and hear the participation, it is a lot easier to do. And like we've just talked about, that's a big part of it. But if you can't do it, if you really don't have the hardware, we've seen that it's possible. Sure.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I have a good one when it comes to technical content, Dennis. This is a good one that probably doesn't have a clear answer, but it's really interesting to hear. I'm going to kind of put a couple people's questions together, and that is, what have you found are some of the themes or recommendations you found from taking classroom material that was designed for an in-person classroom, right, and turning it into virtual classroom content that's good for a virtual classroom? And then I'll piggyback that on, and in that process of changing something from a classroom to virtual kind of a type of content, how many hours of work do you think it takes to make 1 hour of online class content?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's actually, we're living that every day. We have all the courses that we do virtually, we also do in a classroom setting. I would say the major, or I won't say major, but one of the challenges that we do have in that is there are cases where in the classroom, you can have information that you're presenting that the instructor can fill in the blanks. He can fill the gaps with scenarios and answer those questions. You can see body language and understand. One of the things that we're working on all the time is improving the presentations. One of the tools that has really helped for the virtual training and gets overlooked is PowerPoint or whatever tool you're using. There are other tools. So we even mentioned the simulations earlier. There are programs out there, but there's a lot of simulations and information that you can build into PowerPoint as well by using short animations. A lot of those out there today for technical equipment of all types and other applications. Use that along with PowerPoint, and you can really make a great application in the classroom that is easily understood and very real world like. So I would say the combination of those things, as far as how long, you can find all types of numbers and X amount of hours of development per hour of online training. I think it varies on the topic and the expertise of the instructor or the development team. If it's very, very specific, the more specific it is about a certain piece of equipment, it can be more detailed and take longer. So I think that the answer to the question is it's variable. If you have a topic that you think you can get the information across in a shorter period of time, I think it's going to take you less time. So I don't know if I have a perfect answer there, because we've done all the above. We have some customers that ask us to develop specific online training for them on a very specific process or procedure. That takes more effort and time than say, hey, tell us something about that's a general application, because you can get more readily available and you don't have to have quite the detail. So I think it varies. There's numbers out there of for every online hour, it takes you 100 hours of time to put that together. And varies, just depends on who you want to look at. So I don't know if I answered the question. I think you're right, Ryan. I'm not sure there's
No
a specific answer.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I think that really helped us. I'm culling through our questions. Man, you guys are curious and I love it. This is the most curious we've seen our attendees on a webinar in a while, and I love it. So unfortunately, we only have about 10 minutes tops to really spend time with you before we close up the webinar. So let's go. Again, we want to keep this to the time that we promised people, and so we don't go over the time. But hey, you guys are curious. Let's stick around and answer some of these questions. So got some really deep, really theoretical, philosophical questions about virtual training. I've kind of sorted through them here. And let's talk about, this is going to be an interesting one. So, and I'll try to answer this one. This is and definitely Greg and Dennis, you step in with your thoughts on this. How does virtual training and in-person training compare in terms of retention? So are people retaining that information? Again, this is a huge topic all across the ATD sphere in the training industry is retention. And how, when people walk out the door or log out of that session, how much of that is going to go right out the other ear, right? We all, I'm sure, are aware for this person who has asked this question of the 70-20-10 rule, right? Where 70% of what you learn is actually by doing and retain. So 70% of what you retain and keep in your mind is from doing the job itself. 20% is really from interacting and collaborating with others and learning by coaching and mentoring process. And really that 10% of what you retain and learn is what people talk to you in the classroom about, or, from lecture or that kind of thing. So really 10% is really just being told how to do it. Really doing that job is where the retention helps. So the more you can do that in the classroom and in virtual, the more that's going to be retaining. So the real challenge we have and the real kind of conundrum we're going to work through all the time is, in the virtual format, can we simulate doing that job to the extent we possibly can? And so in the simulation you saw, we're actually doing the meter testing. And if you say, if you have a neutral lead or the neutral bus bar and the load side of the fuse, what should the voltage reading be on a live circuit? You should know what the answer is going to be, right? Versus, on one side of a normally open push button to the other side before you press the button. That kind of stuff is skills-based, kind of practice experience-based questions that really you can gain that kind of skill in a virtual or in-person training. It's really, and I'm going to give all of the props to people like Greg, it's really all about the instructor and the facilitator and the skills they employ in the classroom to engage the students in the learning process. That's really, so as long as you alter the way you approach the student in an appropriate way as the instructor, you can get just as valuable of retention and learning as long as you give them that 70% chunk as much as you can in the terms of retention. So I hope that helps, provide some thought. Again, we could have a whole series of webinars on the topic of retention of information. We constantly are talking about that within our company. Let's see, what are some other good ones? Are these virtual training courses like self-guided online modules? You just kind of watch the video and the movie? And unequivocally, Greg, the answer is no.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was reading another question.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, there's a lot to see.
I'm sorry.
So basically, our class, we do offer self-guided, click through as you go, self-guided online courses. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you're live, you're connected to the instructor right now through a video chat, and you're interacting with one another right now. So that's really what this is about. It's a classroom, but without the classroom, right? Online. Think about Skype, think about, video chat messaging. That's what we're talking about here. Let's see. People are curious about the multiple screens and how we do it. It really takes practice. That's all I gotta say, it has nothing to do with really Zoom or any other software. It's however many hardwares you can set up and manage in your space. So make sure your computer can handle more than 2 screens. We've had that challenge before where the processor is not fast enough on some of our computers to handle 2 or 3 screens. So be wary of that to the person who asked that question about different screens. It's all about computer hardware limitations more than it is software. Let's see, when you take a break, does the software have a countdown timer that will display, Greg?
I use a third-party one. Yeah, and it's
Want to do a quick plug of them, and why not?
you mean you'd like me to show you one?
Sure, you could. Well, you'd have to share your screen, so maybe not.
Right,
But,
right. No, just that it's not built in. That's the answer to
Not
the
built in,
question.
for
My
sure.
gosh, I mean that's why I was distracted a minute ago. You guys have such good questions.
Yeah, this is wonderful. This is great.
Really
We won't be able to
good.
answer them all now. And really the plan is to have a series of webinars where we dig deeper into some of these aspects of the topic. And so it's really good to see where your curiosities lie in terms of, where we want to talk about. Let's see. Do we have pre-made video courses? And the answer is we have pre-made self-guided online courses that are narrated with text that you can search through. And for instance, welding, we have lots of great instructor-led course material and online material for welding. So absolutely on that one. 28 questions left. I don't think we'll get through them all, but we're gonna try. Yes, we do use Microsoft Teams in our company to keep ourselves connected to one another, but to hold public sessions, we haven't really found it to be super useful. It's more of an internal discussion more than a customer interfacing discussion. But we do use Teams for video chats internally. Let's see here. Do we still mail hands-on kits for use in the class? Yes, we do. For our basics of electricity class, we mail that snap kit to our attendees. Let's see. Touching and pointing to different things on kind of the screen they're seeing, that's absolutely possible with the magic of remote control and annotation. They can circle things, they can point to objects, they can interact with them in terms of, identification. What would you do here? Where would you check? What kind of troubleshooting would you do and where would you check? That kind of stuff. And I think that's really important for boiler-specific virtual training. PLC training, can you do that with some of these simulations? Yes, absolutely, that's possible. Again, electrical troubleshooting is electrical troubleshooting, whether it's PLCs or control panels or VFDs or motors. Let's see, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions and then we're gonna have to wrap up. And again, you guys see the information on the screen here. If you really have that question that's burning and you want an answer to it that we weren't able to get to on this webinar, no problem. Give us a call at this number, 847-808-4000, or email sales@tpctraining.com. And that connects to our executive team, and we're going to be able to answer your question on that. So definitely feel free to use our open email and phone line to ask any specific training related questions. We have a lot of experts in the training industry, as you might imagine, and on our staff that can help answer your questions. Let's see.
Brian, we did get a chat question. I looked over there.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you do this for large groups instead of just individual attendees? And the answer is for sure. We have done this for individual companies that have multiple attendees or multiple people in the same room. So we can do it for individual companies as well, do virtual training. And that's on the increase for sure with the COVID-19 situation that we're in. Some companies traveling out is not part of their.
That's great. I agree with you 100%. And I'll also say that in terms of this software, we can see up to 50 people at the same time as if they're sitting in the same room with us. And we can basically get to even up to 100 people by flipping through different screens. Seeing 50 people on one screen, no matter how big the screen is, they'll be minuscule. But we have actually encountered that limitation, right, in some of our TPC training company-wide stuff that we've done. And so it's pretty cool to see the true horsepower of some of these video chat softwares, and they can handle classes with full video and audio of quite large sizes. Absolutely. And what we typically do as a company in the classroom is we try to limit individual sessions to no more than, than 20 or 30 people per session for hands-on interactive sessions. Because as you can imagine, Greg trying to get the meter leads from one person to the 100th person, is not going to be easy and or time efficient. So what we do try to do is, if there is over, let's say 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus people interested in training from one location, we can do a private training session for you. We can do a customer specific training session where everyone from the company logs in at the same time, but maybe in two separate sessions on 2 separate days, so that we can really give that dedicated interactive hands-on time with those people in each session is what we typically do. So there's no real cap on the amount, but really just to make sure we can get good interaction. Sometimes we might split it up, just to give you kind of a little bit inside scoop on that. I think that's pretty much, again, you guys are asking some great questions I wish we had time to get to, but I think that's going to wrap it up for the day. So again, if you have any more burning questions about virtual training, again, today's day and age really means suddenly we're faced with a sudden choice of, oh, I have to do virtual training or get no training at all. If you really have some questions on that, we are here. We've been doing this for years now, and we were finally able to, just say, all right, we're going to offer this to everyone in this time of need, and that's what we're continuing to do. We built out our virtual training schedule. You can take a look at that on tpctraining.com. But also in terms of just the back end, training best practices, we want to help the world with these webinars, and we want to just show what we've learned. So that's why we're here. And if you want to learn more, definitely just get in there and contact us. So thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate all of your inputs and questions. We still have 28 more that are left to go through. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.